My name's Nathan Chan. I'm the CEO and publisher of Founder Magazine, and today I have with me Dave Jennings and Linda Diggle, and we're going to talk about this book here, Authority Content by Dave Jennings. He's a SaaS systems-based entrepreneur and also runs a creative digital agency, or runs a digital agency here in Melbourne. And we've got Linda, who was the book consultant and the launch expert behind this epic book that is a bestseller. And we're going to break down how they have absolutely crushed it and become, what do you call it? Bestsellers? What do you call it?
Amazon bestseller.
All right, awesome. Would you like to share, how did this book come about? Give us a little bit of a background of how you got started becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so we run this digital agency, and having worked with a lot of different companies, we always see the same problems for business owners. They struggle to create great content. So we needed to develop a system, a process on how they could market themselves. And that's really what authority content is. And I've used it to launch a lot of my own businesses and also now clients' businesses as well. And over the past 10 years, we've just chiseled away at this method. So it's a finely tuned process for helping to launch companies, helping to spread word about great products and services.
Awesome. Your friend Linda, my friend too now, and she's helping us with some awesome stuff with books. How did you get started with books? Can you give us a little bit of a run through?
Yeah, I started with books pre-Kindle, pre-ebooks back in 2002. I was working in the events industry, and as I went through the events industry, I moved into marketing, and then decided really all I just wanted to do was play with books. So I just started doing that full time.
Gotcha. How long did it take for you to produce the book, and what tips can you give to people around coming up and writing content for your book?
It took me a good 2 to 3 years actually to write, probably a lot longer than it needed to be. And that was just a lot of things going on in my own life. And oftentimes writing a book, it's one of those things that you know is important, but it's not urgent. So you always prioritize it down. But a lot of people, they struggle when they're looking at a blank Word document thinking, how am I going to write 50,000, 60,000 words? And I approached it a little bit differently. I was more comfortable to present, and we were already running little workshops. So I did the pre-thinking up front, thinking, well, I'm going to run a workshop with the whole purpose of getting that transcribed, and then that becomes version 1 of the book. Yes. So all of the different sessions in this one-day workshop that I ran were almost like chapters, and I thought about the main points, and then at the end of that workshop I took that and then gave it to a ghostwriter, and he had first crack at it.
Self-publish versus published. What are both of your guys' thoughts when people are looking to write a book?
I had weighed up whether or not I should go through a publisher, because traditionally there's I'm published on a particular label or whatever, but I had chatted with a lot of different authors, and a lot of them said they could be quite restrictive in the way that things that they let you do. And being a marketer, I'm quite creative. I'm happy to break out the first 3 chapters and give it away free, or I'm happy to send out free copies to certain people or PDFs. It's all part of this launch strategy. And I know when you're working with a publisher, they can be very restrictive on a lot of those things. So for me, it was quite an easy decision. I gave it some consideration, but self-publish all the way.
Linda, I know you have a lot of insights around this.
Yeah, I think there's actually a place for both.
Yep.
And I think it depends on the book, and it depends on the author. So traditional publishers have a lot of power in certain areas, and what they don't have is they don't have a platform for that author. So if it's purely for getting a book into a bookstore or for certain distribution or even translation opportunities, publishers have the power. The traditional publishers have the power. If you're wanting to be the best example of your work through your book, or add a book to a body of work that you're developing, yes, and you're prepared to go out there and promote that as part of your brand, I think that perhaps, a traditional publisher could be a little bit restrictive for you. And there's also more longevity that can be gained from you doing it yourself.
Now we're going to talk about the book launch process, but I think you guys have done some really cool things, especially Dave, with the cover and the title and the tagline. I love the cover. I'm a bit of a design buff. The cover is really, really solid. Talk us through how you came up with the name and the cover and the tagline.
I just happened to come across this domain name that was on auction, and it was authority content. And I thought, wow, that explains exactly what I'm doing incredibly well. So I bid on that, and it was a bit of a case of being at the right time at the right place, because shortly after that, Google started talking about, they released their quality guidelines, and it was their acronym, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, EAT. And so everybody started talking about authority content. So I'd kind of right place at the right time. And some of the people who originally attended that workshop that I ran to write the book followed through the entire journey, and every step of the way became more and more invested in what it was that I was doing. So things like the tagline, I posted it on my Facebook, hey, I'm looking for some taglines, and got people to post it in. And then same with the cover. I had some different cover designs that I was posting and getting people involved in. I think in a book launch, that is absolutely key. You want to have someone involved at, every stage in the process, because the more someone feels like they contribute to something, the more they buy in, the more they want to see the success of it. And that's how I got so many great people which we'll talk about, ambassadors and people sharing it and getting behind it, because they were involved in the process.
It's important to kind of highlight the fact that you're taking it to your community. If you're going to seek feedback on book covers, book titles, taglines, things like that, to take it to your community, because if you take it wide to family and friends, you're going to get all sorts of responses that probably isn't your target market.
And that's another thing I actually did when it came to proofing the book. So after I had first crack at writing it, then I extended out to my audience and said, hey, I've written a book and I'd like to get some initial editors to give me some feedback. You'll get a preview copy of the book, and I mailed out a manuscript to them, and it was to the people on my database, not necessarily Facebook. So that way it was my community, and then I got direct feedback. And it was also a great way to get many eyes looking at it that I didn't have to pay for either, because they wanted to be involved in the process. And I got to write thank yous in the front of the book that said thanks to them for their contribution. Again, getting them involved in that process for those who wanted to.
How long did you plan for the actual launch?
Again, it's about engaging someone as early in the process as possible. So I listed out all of the different top experts that I knew, people that I would like to have be involved, and I started outreaching to them back at the start of the year. And I wanted to send them a preview copy to get them to get their thoughts, and potentially, if they like the book, give me a little testimonial or something, which we've got at the front of the book. If they liked the book and they gave me a testimonial, I thought, hey, they'll come on this journey with me. I'd got the proofreaders, they'd started to send their copies back. Then I've started to get the experts, and they've started to send their testimonials in at that point. We started to work on the cover and the tagline around that point in time.
So just to be clear, so people understand, you have two pieces of the puzzle. You launched the actual book, but it was very, very soft in prep for the Amazon launch. Why did you do that?
We got the first batch printed, which was 500 copies through a printer up in Sydney, SOS. And the thought process there was get the first edition that no one else had seen, and I wanted to have...
It was scarcity. It was a scarcity play.
Yeah, and I wanted to have invite only, and I wanted to do a launch. We did it here, so where we're interviewing right now, and wanted to invite friends, family, some of these experts and influencers along who had already been involved in that journey, so they felt like they were part of the inside group. The people that were there right from the get-go. And even on the night of the book launch, so everybody who came on the night got a free copy, and I was signing copies on the night, and Adrian was there and filmed it, so we wanted to capture as much of that as we could, which we used for pre-launch content as well, like when we were actually about to go live on Amazon. So we captured all of this content, and it was a great way to, again, just start to build the buzz and the excitement, because not everybody could get a copy of the book. If you weren't here in Melbourne, you weren't able to attend this, it was just building that anticipation.
So the launch went in two parts. You went live, kind of live with the book, kind of soft, scarcity, limited edition, limited only copies, and that was all in prep for this Amazon piece. Now, would you guys, if you had your time again, would you do it that way, 100%? Do you think that's really effective?
Without a doubt, if I had my time again, I think doing that live piece was really important. It also helped us build the remarketing list. We were running YouTube ads for that night. As people started to engage in that content, we were building the audience that would then get involved when we did the real book launch.
Gotcha. So couple of things on that. You guys crushed it with the Amazon piece, which we're going to delve deep on. And if you could talk numbers, that would be great. Now, you got an awesome domain, authoritycontent.com. Tell us about that and the the site and the pre-launch list.
Very early on, it was all about building a pre-launch notification list. I wanted anyone who was engaging with this idea of authority content to want to opt in, to get notification, and to let them know that, hey, we're going to actually give this book away for free on Amazon. That was a real key part as well, to have a nice, strong, authoritative domain name that had a very clear call to action, so I could get these content pieces out and drive them to this page to get them into the opt-in list.
You did paid marketing as well and build that retargeting list. How key and crucial is that? Are you guys able to share on that piece?
Pretty much what I was doing, I was putting out content on Facebook, building, trying to get people to engage in that content, building a remarketing list, and then we were remarketing to them via Facebook and also on YouTube as well. Trying to get them first involved in the live event. It was almost like there were these steps, and first I wanted to get them involved in coming to the live event, then I wanted to get them to opt into the pre-launch, and depending on what stage they were in the process, they would get served up specific ads.
Gotcha. So leading up to the Amazon piece, you had a big, amount of, clout and also awareness and getting people hyped up, and you let those people know that the Amazon piece was coming, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of, even on the night of the live book launch here, one of the last things I said in my little presentation to the people here was, we're going to go live on Amazon in about a month from now. Yes. There'll be a point when I outreach to you. You'll know when that time is, and you'll know, what it is that I want you to do. And I really kind of let them know that I was looking for that commitment, and that was part of them coming here on the night. It was, again, to have them invested in that success. And that's, at that point, that's probably when I started to chat with Linda. And that's when we really talked about the strategy around, okay, are we going to give it away for free? Should we do it just as a paid book? I was always going to do it as a physical book, yes. But was the big strategy play around Kindle or physical book? And I remember that's probably the discussion, one of the very first discussions we had.
Yeah, that was the first discussion. Looking at all your assets and what you had and what you'd already built, where you wanted to go with that, what your outcome for the book was, and it was the piece that I was coming in at was the Amazon bestseller. So the best way to do that is through ebook, because it's very easy to download internationally, whereas print book there's delays, there's restrictions and things. So ebooks made the most sense, and you had built so much momentum up until that point. It made sense to then take it to Amazon at that point.
I think that was the first thing you asked me was, what's your objective from this book launch?
What's your outcome?
Yeah.
And what was your outcome?
To be an Amazon bestseller, I wasn't necessarily looking to make money off the book launch itself. Like, I know launching a book is a long game. It's about getting your ideas into the hands of as many people as possible. And then those that are interested, then they'll kind of start to come and see the other things that we had to offer. So I didn't feel this was also a play to. Actually, one of the early people I gave the manuscript to, I sent it to them and to get the feedback. A lot of pretty much unanimously, I got really great feedback. Except there was one person who told me, you should write a book that's useful but incomplete. So that way they'll come to you and then you can sell your high-priced product on the other end. And that didn't sit so well for me. The whole purpose of this book is to lay out everything, deliver so much value. And some people, they'll take it and run with it and implement, but there's going to be other people that'll go, hey, I want to find out more about what I've got to share. And for me, it was about that. Just, it's not a squeeze piece. That was another actually discussion we have. Linda was like, how many hooks or call to actions do you want to have? Should we put a page in the front of the book to try and get people back into your database and list? And we had a bit of a discussion around that. Again, just coming back to what's the objective.
Did you do that?
Not in the physical book. For the Kindle version, we put a page in at the start because we did some launch bonuses that we can talk a little bit about to encourage them to claim the launch bonuses. But in the physical book, not so much, because I want this to feel like a book that you pick up. Like, I don't have screenshots in there. It doesn't feel like an internet marketing type book, because it's not. It's a book that you would expect to see if you went down to the library or, you know, pick up any bestseller. It's not designed to squeeze every person that reads it, you know, wait, here's a bonus if you come back to the website. So that was a discussion that we had, and then it was a good suggestion to have it in the Kindle, and that's, we've been able to build a bit of a list off that as well.
Yeah, I think with the call to action at the beginning of the book, I think it's all about how you're positioning it. So with the way we've placed it in the ebook is very much, people are busy, they love the book, they download it, and the very first thing they see, they're already excited, they want to join the list, they want to join the updates, they want to get the bonuses. And then typically what happens with an ebook is they'll start reading a few chapters and then life gets in the way. Whereas the purpose of this call to action at the beginning of the book is they're now in the community and they can sort of be reminded, get them back to these principles in the book, not so much get on my list and I just want to sell you this massive big high ticket item. It's more about getting them in the community, engaging them, keeping them engaged in the content in the book, and I think that works really well.
At the moment, how many downloads is the book at? It's about that Kindle version.
Complete?
Yeah, complete.
Oh, it's about 8,500.
So we've probably got maybe about, since I last checked, about maybe 750, 800 people opt in off that. So you're kind of looking at about, what's that, 10% conversion off the total number of downloads from the Kindle.
Launch the book, limited offer, like limited amount, build up that content, build up the community, then look to do the Amazon bestseller as the goal. You had two different options. You had the Kindle digital version and you had the physical version. Now, what did you make free and what did you charge for? How long did you keep it free? Can you talk us about that part?
I guess it all comes down to, there's so many tactics you can take on Amazon, and it's really about tactics versus strategy. So we were taking a really long-term strategy, and that also meant a few, there was a few things we could take advantage of in the Amazon ecosystem. There are restrictions with that, but as we're taking a long-term view, being in the KDP Select program, which is what they call it, means that you're exclusive to Amazon for the first 90 days. So you can't go wide with this strategy for at least for the first 3 months. So we couldn't go onto iBookstore, we couldn't, but that worked in our favour because we wanted to really, really concentrate all the sales and just go deep on those sales. So putting it through the KDP Select program means you need to have it exclusive to Amazon for the first 90 days. And any time within that 90 days, you can choose 5 days where you can have it for free. And so we chose the first 5 days at launch to get that momentum and to get that velocity, because I think the key with launching it for free is to get that velocity. We're day 50 now and I'm still tracking, but the first 30 days are really crucial, and having those 5 free days is, that's the kind of the manic stage, and then there's things you can do post.
And it was a little bit manic.
Gotcha. So from day 1 to 5, you made it free. How many people downloaded it for free?
Day 1, 1,600 copies.
Yeah, wow.
And that was when that was really sort of all in.
Cooker,
that was all in.
And you guys didn't, was it available to purchase for print as well during that period?
Yes.
Okay, and you moved 1,600 units?
That's of ebooks only. In day 1.
Because we really approach this like a product launch.
Yeah,
so,
I think you have to.
Yeah, even like in the lead up. So after we had the live launch and we collected all of these assets, I lined out the content that I wanted to drip out over this period and heavily stacked a lot of that free content within the first 5 days, because that's when it's free. It's a really no-brainer, easy offer. You were going to say the number?
6,378.
Gotcha, wow.
So that was over the 5 free days.
Day 1 to 5, what are the key things that you did to get to those numbers in the first 5 days?
First of all, was getting it submitted, validated, and completely up there and live,
Yes.
but not pointing anything there yet.
Yes.
So we wanted to get it live. So it was there. It was actually there the day before. It
Yes.
wasn't free. It was just up there for sale.
Yes.
And we made it for sale at $9.99, and we got some sales. So it was up there. It was up there from the night. Well, the night before, and then the next morning was when we pushed it out at sort of 9 a.m. particularly to the ambassadors.
Yes.
And you already had lined up some lists.
So there's probably a few things that had all lined up. It's funny, I think about it now, and we were just lining up so many things to try and have them all fall at the same time. So we had the pre-launch notification list.
Yes.
I also lined up, there's a service called Push Crew, where it was like this little pop-up thing that was done through the browser, which means you can push a message to someone not even like within their browser, not even with their email.
Would you say that's effective?
I think it is. I actually turned it off before we started to get really busy though, and that was a bit of a decision for me. It's like one of those things, same with pop-ups, like technically speaking, we know pop-ups improve opt-in rates, like it's been tested a million times, but from a user perspective, I didn't really like the feel of this little in-app or in-browser pop-up. So I made a call partway through. We'd already had about 300 people opt in for this little push thing, but probably a good maybe week out or so, I ended up turning that off. But that was one of the things. So we had the pre-launch notification list, we had the push crew, we'd also maybe about 2 weeks before, that's when we assembled this ambassador crew. So basically anyone who opted in for the pre-launch notification list, it was almost like I told them after they opted in, I said, hey, we also have this ambassadors group. Would you like to get behind and push it? And we set up a private Facebook group.
Yep. We got someone to champion that. So having a group is great, but if there's no one actually really interacting and getting in there all the time and, you know, posting updates, so we found Ray.
Yeah, Ray Milladoni. He was and he was also the guy who ran the live book launch as well here. So he was, again, invested in the journey, and he really wanted to see the book succeed because he believed in it. And then I got him to be the champion inside the ambassador group because I knew things were going to get hectic in that book launch, and I wasn't going to be able to hop in there at every second kind of telling people what we needed this small group of ambassadors to be out there sharing and talking about.
Gotcha. You also ran Thunderclap.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So that started 2 weeks prior.
Yeah. Thunderclap was interesting. It's a service that people can basically, it's almost like they pledge their social media accounts and say, at a specific time, on a certain date, I'm happy for my account to get pushed a message. And the message was, surprise, authority content is free on Amazon for the next 5 days. There's about 800,000 social reach on this. So we had a lot of, Founder was one of the ones that jumped in and joined that as well. For people that I didn't yet know, it was a great, something big and exciting is happening here. And then I could also share with them the video that Adrian shot on the night as well of here, which again showed that, you know, we've really got something of significance here that people are getting behind. So from that perspective, I think it was worthwhile, but from actual traffic driven, it didn't drive a whole lot through to the website. I think the clicks that got through ended up getting about 950 clicks out of 800,000 social reach, which I found quite surprising. And I think that kind of shows how noisy social media is these days. So from that, you know, on one hand it was great, but then on a traffic driving point, not so sure. But I know Linda was saying after the clap, it improved the rankings significantly within Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So we don't know, unlike Google, Amazon doesn't really tell us how they work their algorithm.
Yeah.
So, but there are clues.
Yes.
And ranking is one thing that we do kind of look at very, very closely, particularly on launch day. I didn't leave my computer. So when we actually launched in the morning, the book's position was 6,000 total in the total free Kindle store, which is important as opposed to the paid store, so free. It was position 6,000. When the thunderclap went off, it was at position 3,000. So just a small buzz that had built up before midday you got it halfway there. But then as soon as the thunderclap went off, within 2 hours it had gone down to position 500. So
wow.
there was other things going on, so we can't know for sure whether that was, I'm sure thunderclap played a part in that, and whether it was just the social proof factor and then people started looking. And the fact that it was a free book, well, there's zero risk, but I think it really did play a part.
Yeah.
How significant that is, it's hard to say.
Because there were so many pieces.
One thing that popped into my mind that I think was quite key for us, those partners that I was talking about, we actually had SEM Rush contact us and ask if they could send out 3 free chapters out to a good portion of their database. They were running this little survey for digital agencies, and they basically said if you fill out the survey, you get 3 free chapters of authority content. Again, one of these early pieces that kind of helped to build that buzz. It was great for them, but it also helped us because it just started to seed things. And all through this whole launch process, we're building remarketing lists, we're getting people on the pre-notification list. That helps to build the ambassador numbers as well. Like, I'd hand outreach to some ambassadors, but then everybody who opted in, as I said, we told them to become an ambassador. Because I had a few people ask, how did you get so many great reviews very early on? And that was because I had these people, everybody who was involved in the journey, plus the ambassadors, and we prepped them for when it goes live, we need you to jump on and start posting reviews.
Yeah, actually talk to us about the reviews piece. That's key for the rankings, right?
Amazon, like any algorithm, it searches for relevancy, and one of their criteria is reviews. Even a 1-star review shows that someone has actually had the, the time to post a review, but particularly 4- and 5-star reviews is what they're looking for. So the number of reviews certainly plays into where it's ranked and how much weighting they give that.
Yes, okay, and how many reviews did you guys get during that launch period to drive it?
Yeah, they did sort of trickle in, and by the end of well, certainly by the end of 30 days, it was at 50 reviews, but the bulk of them came in that first week.
Yeah.
But there was only 2 times that we really kind of went to the ambassadors and said, now's the time to post your review, and that was at launch, so getting a rush of reviews, and then coming off free to paid, which was another kind of crucial point. There's a couple of sort of really crucial points in there to really try and drive some traffic and some interest. So it was just before it was coming off free and going into paid. We said, if you haven't had the opportunity to post a review, if you've read it, now's the time.
Got you. And with it, when it comes to ambassadors, you had a free Facebook group.
Closed Facebook group is a great way to keep them engaged and keep them, and also seeing the others that are in the group. And as they're reading them, because they've got the advanced copies, they're sort of privy to this information prior to anybody else. And them sharing the information is really a great piece, because again, it drives that anticipation for them as well, and feel like they're really part of it.
That was big. Definitely encouraged them to post what it was that they were doing in the group. So I had lined up a few interviews with some of the ambassadors. So when the ambassadors were posting them live, they were referencing it in the ambassador group. And then, I was reinforcing, hey, great, thank you so much for your help there. And then there were people as well. I gave a couple of people some preview chapters of the book that they published on their blogs. Again, they were posting it on there, and really telling them as we're going through this launch, helping them to say, oh, this is where we're currently ranking now, and this is, the next content piece that had launched. So the first email that I did send out for that launch was a very short email just saying, hey, surprise, the book is now free. You can go get the book on over at Amazon for the next 5 days free. So that was a very short email, but then after that I had some content pieces. I was doing a lot of things on social media as well. David Hobson from Founder, he'd made some recommendations around what I was going to do on LinkedIn. So he had suggested taking sections from the book, and probably maybe about a week and a half in the lead up to that launch as well, I was posting quite regularly on LinkedIn, and then getting a few key people to like it and share it, and that started to gain some weight.
So you found some traction with LinkedIn?
Yep, LinkedIn. I also went to Fiverr and got some really funny photos and things like that of people writing authority content in tennis balls. Someone wrote, I love authority content on their fingers. And it was just this fun, engaging content to share on social media. We were doing pre-roll YouTube ads. So all of this was happening again, and I'm sharing it inside the ambassador group to again encourage them to be commenting, to share, to like, those sorts of things as well.
Okay, so talk to me, guys, when you went from free to paid after the 5-day period.
When it was free in the Kindle store, just before it ticked over, it was at position 130 in the entire free Kindle store. And then it went, I think it was to 8,000 when it ticked, 7,600 or something when it ticked over to pay the very next hour. Yes. So that's a really crucial time, which is actually very good considering there's 4.4 million Kindle books in the Kindle store. So
yeah, wow.
Coming off free and into the paid Kindle store at 7,600 is excellent. But we're still going through this bestseller strategy. And the thing about bestseller is it's easy to say I'm an Amazon bestseller if everyone's getting it for free, but the real test is, are people willing to pay for it?
As far as those ranking stats that you're talking about being in the free, that's like in the overall Kindle store. So we actually got, when it was in the free section, we got #1s in pretty much every single category. You kind of start off at the deepest category first,
yeah, wow.
which was, I think, direct marketing. So we slowly worked our way up each one of these categories, basically getting #1 until we pretty much got to the top. So the top one was
this is during the 1 to 5. This is during day 1 to 5.
Yeah,
yes.
The business in investing, I think, is what they call it in the US, and maybe business and money in Australia.
So you guys were topping the charts, but then that was going well, yes?
Yes, and then partway through
day one.
Day one, Ryan Levesque, who has a book called Ask, had given.
I received an email from Ryan, and I'm sure it didn't go to just me, considering his huge list, saying, "Hey, it's my birthday, and I'm about to put out the new edition of Ask, and my publisher has agreed to make it free on the Kindle store for the next 72 hours." And I thought, that's probably the same category that we're trying to rank in, and yes. Considering the size of his list, it's probably going to be quite competitive. So when I looked, it was the same category. So we very soon hopped out of that category into one that was just as relevant, but wasn't his category.
Yeah.
Because that really, he went within an hour. He was, #1 in that category. So
gotcha.
What was interesting with that as well, because he only went for, was it 72 hours? 72 so it was 3. So his was kind of like a big spike and then dropped out. Now we went for the full 5 days and we maintained ranking. So there was a period there where we're butting heads. We were position #2 against him for a good amount of that period, but we held strong all the way through. And with the changing of the categories, we managed to basically get the #1 status that we were after in basically all but one section, which was the business and money in the US.
Business and investing?
In the US, yeah. Which we ended up getting it to #2, but pretty much everything else we got #1. And Australia, we pretty much dominated. Yeah. We held our ground all the way through that free period, and then also mailed and pushed quite strong in that transition to move from free to paid. We made it $1 for the launch because we wanted to make sure that it was still, for the people who missed out for the free, that it was still a great offer that they wanted to jump on board.
Gotcha.
And I think that's also it was a good long-term strategy as well, because you had a lot of podcast interviews that you'd done throughout that period of time, but the podcaster couldn't actually get them out. They couldn't actually publish them at that time. So when you're promoting your book, sometimes there was mention of it being free, but it actually went out after the free period, and we can't control that. We only have 5 free days. We can't extend that at all. It's something we just can't control. So when they go to the Amazon store, it's not such a hard ask to say, well, I'll pay the 99 cents after they've just had an hour of value on a podcast, and are really bought into the book. So 99 cents was a kind of almost, it was the lowest price you can actually do on Amazon.
Yes.
And it's also a way of, these people who were still catching up on the launch, for them to make it a really attractive offer for them to purchase a book.
I feel like that podcast series, I got lined up a whole series of podcasts that
How many?
Maybe about 15.
Yeah, wow, okay.
But I got to it a little bit late in the strategy, because initially I thought I want these to drop as the book is in that free period.
Yes.
But it didn't end up working that way. But I think that played to my advantage. They started dripping out after that free period, which kept that momentum up, which kept people going. If I had my time again, I'd probably spend more time focusing in on the podcast. They played a real role in keeping that sort of momentum going. And the way I ended up getting the podcast was I outreached to someone who does roundup posts,
Yes.
and we actually lined up a roundup post where he went and asked 45 different marketing experts about what their best strategy about becoming an expert was.
Yes.
And we created this mammoth post,
Yes.
and I launched that just at that period where it was transitioning from paid to free. So that got shared lots, but it also, it opened up the door. Now I could very easily have conversations with all of these other experts, and some of which had podcasts. And that's kind of how I then got my foot in the door to have some of those podcasts as well.
So what else happened next? Like, when do you guys start to die off and go, okay, enough?
For me, I pushed hard for those first 5 days.
Yes.
That was like one of the biggest things. And then probably after that, like, I shifted gears,
Yes.
but we continued to push.
Yes.
But it changed probably quite a bit after that 5-day period.
I was sort of watching it for the first 30 days because the first 30 days is quite crucial for the Amazon algorithm. They do tend to favour new releases.
Yes.
And so there was a couple of points where the Amazon algorithm has sort of had a certain stickiness to it. So we'd done the work and done the steady climb, and then Amazon was kind of starting to show up in the people also bought, you know,
Yes.
all those sort of also bought things, and it started showing up on hot new releases.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we didn't expect. So it showed up on so it's sort of on every page. When you go to a certain category, it's showing on every single page, so you can't help but see it right there. So it started to reward the steady climb that we'd done over that sort of 5 days, and it was sort of really 10-day period, and then they started kicking in their own marketing efforts, I guess, or their own, they were sort of feeding it through their own ecosystem.
Yes.
And that they really tend to push that for the first 30 days. So I was watching it very closely for 30 days, and it stayed. It was still, it's still today at #1.
Yeah, wow.
And they even mailed sections of their list. So I don't know if you ever get emails from Amazon, if you've purchased from Amazon, and they'll make a recommendation.
Yes.
And they'll look at previous things you've bought and then make recommendations. So authority content popped up in one of those. So I don't know what it was that people had to buy, but I had some people forward me emails showing that they had been mailed from Amazon suggesting authority content for them.
That's so
And
cool.
it wasn't just, quite often Amazon will say, oh, you've bought this marketing book, so you might like this big long list of marketing books. It mailed just that book. So it
Wow.
was there on its own, which was brilliant.
What didn't work?
Yeah.
What if you were to do it again, what wouldn't you do?
I think I adjusted on the push crew, which I talked about. That just wasn't the right fit for me. The thunderclap, I think I would still do it, but it didn't quite work as well for us. Another strategy we looked at that didn't work so well was product hunt. And I've had a few people suggest and say that that worked really well for them. And maybe it was that we didn't quite have enough of a community to get in there, because for product hunt you
Sort of
basically
upvotes.
and you have to get the first round of people to kind of get in there and get it past a threshold, which we just didn't end up getting. So that one wasn't really a hit for me, and I probably would have focused more around like the things that probably did work. The podcast was a big one. Connecting with the influencers was a big one. So having them involved in the journey the whole way.
I think the ambassadors group was really powerful, and perhaps that could have been started a little bit earlier. I think if I was going to do that or make a suggestion to someone, I'd say start that earlier. So it was about the 3 week prior to launch, and the fact that they were so enrolled in your book.
So you think 2 months out for a little group, an ambassadors group involved in the community?
Yeah,
You think 2 months, 3 months?
6 to 8 weeks prior, I'd recommend. Yeah.
I think the real key is to get early champions behind your book as early as possible, and then have someone involved in the entire journey, and realizing that this takes a heck of a lot of work. Those, the lead up, even just to run the live event here, and then the book launch itself, those 5 days, it was some heavy going, outreaching to different people, lining up the podcast and everything. So just understanding to get an Amazon bestseller, it doesn't happen with a heck of a lot of orchestration and work and lining everything up. The other one that played an important role for us that we didn't talk on too much was around the paid marketing as well. We did do quite a lot on Facebook, particularly pushing some of that launch content and then remarketing to them. And then also, actually another one that popped into my head, there's different ones, and we'll add this into the post where we go into great detail, was I also outreached to the experts and asked them to give like a gift or a bonus. So for anyone who purchased the book, they actually got over $1,000 worth of different courses and online things. All they had to do was send in their Amazon receipt and they got a free copy. Now I only announced that within the launch, like in that first 5-day period, I mentioned that, but it made it much easier for partners and experts to now suggest and start talking about it, because they were, they gave a testimonial, they gave a bonus, they were involved through the whole process. And that's another thing I found with books. I was just quite humbled about how many people came out of the woodwork to help share and promote it, because it's a book. It's not like, a webinar that someone is trying to get you on and then you'll sell a high-priced product at the end. Like, this is a low-risk, easy product and very easy for someone to share. So I had people mailing who I didn't really have much of a relationship with, and I got to know through the launch period where they solo mailed to their list saying you should get a copy of authority content. And it was just, all of that good social proof, and I mean, it all comes back to having a great book. Like that, the content needs to be there. So if you're going to write a book, it's got to have some awesome value there. But if you do that and then you layer everything that we talked about through this interview around the marketing, that's when it all clicks together. Great product and then very strategic lead up to the launch.
Was there anything else on the Amazon front or anything besides the ambassadors that you think could have done?
Yeah, well, I think just to tag on to what you're saying is that it's got to be a good book, and also take that really long-term strategy, that kind of the strategy versus tactics for Amazon, because we've seen some spikes and they've not held. So that really is a case for steady, and I think that sort of really needs to be a representation of your business if you're going to write a book that's part of your body of work. There's a real case for steady there. So that steady growth, those steady, we're still at #1 at day 50. So it's and I think that's just the building and the building. You're going to have that velocity at the beginning, but then having a good book that people are wanting to review, so people are continuing to review it. One thing that we didn't really talk about, but when you do put it on this 90-day exclusivity, you do get insights in the dashboard about the pages read, how many pages are read, and people are continuing to read it every single day. It's getting a lot of pages read, so it wasn't just I'll just download the book and it'll just sit on my Kindle. People are actually engaging with it, they're reading, they're learning from it. So it's that sort of taking that long-term view.
This whole strategy that we're talking about is filled with numerous tactics all linked together. You couldn't just rely on one person mailing or one particular strategy, or this was, I threw all angles. I've never worked so hard in my life to give away something for free. Like this is the hard, correct. It's taken 3 years for me to work as hard as I can to give away something for free.
That's crazy. Awesome. All right, guys, well, we'll wrap there, but thank you so much for taking the time to just share a ton of gold. You've just pretty much given away a whole course on how to become an Amazon bestseller, so thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Awesome.